You know what separates the successful from the struggling? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not even opportunity. It's something far simpler and far more profound. The successful have learned to follow their plan instead of their feelings. Now let me tell you, that's not a popular message in today's world where everyone talks about following your heart and doing what feels right. But here's the truth. Your feelings will lie to you. They'll betray you. They'll lead you right off the cliff while telling you it's the path to happiness. I learned this lesson the hard way. And let me share something personal with you. Years ago, I had committed to reading for an hour every evening. I had my plan all written out. 7 o'clock every night, I was going to sit down with books that would stretch my mind and expand my knowledge. Well, the first Monday came around, and you know what happened? I didn't feel like it. I felt tired. I felt like watching television. I felt like the couch was calling my name louder than those books were. And I almost gave in. I almost said, well, Jim, you've had a long day. You deserve to rest. You can read tomorrow. But something stopped me. A small voice inside asked a simple question. If you can't keep this promise to yourself on day 1, what makes you think you'll keep it on day 2? That moment changed everything for me. Because I realized right then that my feelings were not my friends when it came to building the life I wanted. My feelings wanted comfort. My feelings wanted ease. My feelings wanted immediate gratification. But my plan, the one I'd created when I was thinking clearly, when I was rational and forward-looking, that plan wanted something different. It wanted growth. It wanted progress. It wanted the future version of me to have more than the current version. Here's what I've learned after all these years. Feelings are like the weather. They change constantly. You wake up Monday morning feeling fantastic, ready to conquer the world. By Monday afternoon, something someone said has you feeling discouraged. Tuesday, you feel motivated again. Wednesday, you feel overwhelmed. Thursday, you feel confident. Friday, you feel exhausted. And if you're making decisions based on those feelings, you know what you're doing? You're building a life on quicksand. You're trying to construct a solid future on a foundation that shifts every few hours. The truth is, successful people have the same feelings you do. They feel lazy sometimes. They feel unmotivated. They wake up some mornings and think, I don't want to do this today. The difference is they do it anyway. They've learned that feelings are passengers in the car, not the driver. Feelings can come along for the ride, they can comment on the journey, but they don't get to choose the destination and they don't get to steer. Let me tell you about the amateur versus the professional. The amateur waits to feel inspired before they act. Strikes. They wait until they feel motivated, until they feel ready, until they feel confident. You know what happens? They wait their whole lives. Because here's the secret about inspiration. It usually shows up after you start working, not before. The professional knows this. The professional shows up whether they feel like it or not. They show up on the days they feel great and on the days they feel terrible. They show up when it's convenient and when it's not. They show up when people are watching and when nobody's watching. Think about this for a moment. When do feelings really test us? It's not during the work week when we're in routine. It's the weekends. It's the holidays. It's those moments when we have freedom, when we have choices, when nobody's watching. That's when feelings whisper, you deserve a break. You've been working so hard, just this once won't matter. And that's exactly when character is built or broken. That's when we find out who we really are and who we're really becoming. You see, I've watched thousands of people over the years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, you can predict someone's future by watching what they do when they don't feel like doing what they should do. The person who exercises when they feel like it will always be starting over. The person who exercises according to their plan, regardless of feelings, will transform their body and their health. The person who works on their business, when inspiration strikes, will have an average business at best. The person who works on their business according to schedule, rain or shine, motivated or not, will build something remarkable. Now, I'm not saying feelings don't matter. I'm not saying we should become robots without emotions. Feelings are real. They're part of being human. But here's the key distinction. Feelings should inform us, not control us. They're like the dashboard lights in your car. They give you information. When you feel tired, that's information that you need rest. When you feel hungry, that's information that you need food. But you don't let those feelings override your destination. You don't turn the car around and go home every time you feel a little tired. You note the feeling, you acknowledge it, and then you keep driving toward where you committed to go. The problem is that most people have it backwards. They let their feelings make the big decisions and then try to use their logic to justify those decisions afterward. They feel like quitting, so they quit. And then they come up with all kinds of rational-sounding reasons why quitting was the smart choice. They feel like staying in bed, so they stay in bed, and then they convince themselves they needed the rest. They feel like skipping the gym, so they skip it, and then they create elaborate explanations about why it was actually better for their body. But you can't fool yourself forever. Deep down, you know the truth. Deep down, you know when feelings drove the decision instead of your plan. Here's something fascinating about human nature. We respect people who keep their word to others, but we think nothing of breaking our word to ourselves. If you promise your boss you'll have a report done by Friday, you'll work late Thursday night to finish it. If you promise to meet a friend for coffee at 10, you'll show up at 10. But if you promise yourself you'll start that project, you'll eat healthier, you'll save more money, well, those promises seem negotiable. Those promises seem optional. We treat commitments to ourselves like suggestions, like nice ideas that we'll get to if we feel like it. But let me tell you something crucial. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you're teaching yourself that your word doesn't mean anything. You're training yourself not to trust yourself. And if you can't trust yourself, you've got a serious problem because you're the one person you can never get away from. You're with yourself every minute of every day. And if you know deep down that you don't follow through, that you can't count on yourself, that you'll quit when things get hard or when you don't feel like continuing, how are you supposed to attempt anything meaningful? How are you supposed to set big goals when you don't trust yourself to pursue them? The beautiful thing about following your plan instead of your feelings is that every time you do it, you're making a deposit in the bank of self-trust. You're proving to yourself that your word means something. You're demonstrating that you're reliable, that you're committed, that you're serious about becoming who you say you want to become. And those deposits compound, they grow, they multiply, until one day you realize that you've become someone who does what they say they're going to do. And that person, my friend, that person can achieve almost anything. So here's my question for you. Who's in charge of your life? Are your feelings driving, or is your plan? Because I can tell you, from experience, from observation, from watching countless lives unfold over decades, the quality of your life will be determined by your answer to that question. Follow your feelings, and you'll end up wherever your feelings take you, which is usually in circles. Follow your plan, and you'll end up where you decided to go, which is usually somewhere remarkable. Now let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. Let's talk about the economics of all this. Let's talk about what it actually costs you to follow your feelings instead of your plan, because there's a price tag attached to every decision you make, whether you see it or not. I want you to think about the mathematics of consistency for a moment. When you follow your plan, when you do what you said you do every single day, something magical happens. It compounds. You read for 30 minutes today, 30 minutes tomorrow, 30 minutes the day after that. By the end of the year, you've read for over 180 hours. That's enough to go through dozens of books, to completely transform your knowledge in any area you choose. But here's what happens when you follow your feelings instead. Monday you read because you feel like it. Tuesday you skip because you're tired. Wednesday you read. Thursday, Friday, Saturday you skip. Sunday you feel guilty, so you read for an hour trying to make up for lost time. You know what you end up with at the end of the year? Maybe 60 hours if you're lucky. Maybe 20 books instead of 50. But more than that, you end up with a pattern of inconsistency, a pattern of being unreliable to yourself. The marketplace doesn't care about your feelings. Let me say that again because it's important. The marketplace doesn't care about your feelings. Your customers don't care if you didn't feel like making sales calls today. Your body doesn't care if you didn't feel like exercising. Your bank account doesn't care if you didn't feel like going to work. The marketplace rewards results, and results come from consistent action, not from feelings. I've watched people lose fortunes because they operated on feelings instead of plans. I knew a man once, brilliant businessman, built a successful company from nothing, had a plan to save 20% of everything that came in. For years he followed that plan, built up reserves, built up security. Then one day he started feeling wealthy, started feeling like he'd made it, started feeling like those rules didn't apply to him anymore. He felt like spending. He felt like showing off. He felt like he deserved to enjoy his success. Within 3 years, when the market shifted, he lost everything. Not because he didn't know better, but because he let his feelings override his plan. Or think about health. I've seen people destroy their health one feeling at a time. They had a plan. Eat right. Exercise regularly. Get enough sleep. Simple plan. Proven plan. But then feelings got involved. I feel like having dessert. I feel too tired to work out. I feel like staying up late. One decision doesn't seem like much. One piece of cake, one skipped workout, one late night. But here's what people don't understand about the economics of feelings versus plans. It's not about the one decision. It's about the pattern that one decision creates. You see, every time you follow your feelings instead of your plan, you're not just making one choice, you're reinforcing a pattern. You're strengthening a habit. You're training yourself to be the kind of person who gives in when things get uncomfortable. And that pattern, that habit, that identity, it has a compounding effect just like consistency does, except it compounds in the wrong direction. It compounds toward weakness instead of strength, toward failure instead of success, toward regret instead of satisfaction. Let me tell you about what I call the price of ease. Most people want life to be easy. They want to do what feels good in the moment. They want to avoid discomfort. They want to take the path of least resistance. And you know what? Life will let them do that. Life will let them follow their feelings. Life won't stop them from sleeping in, from skipping the hard work, from choosing comfort over growth. But here's what most people don't realize until it's too late. There are two prices in life. There's the price of discipline, and there's the price of regret. The price of discipline weighs ounces. The price of regret weighs tons. When you follow your feelings, you're choosing to pay the price of regret later instead of paying the price of discipline now. And let me tell you, regret is expensive. Regret costs you the life you could have lived. Regret costs you the person you could have become. Regret costs you the respect you could have earned from yourself. That's a heavy price to pay for a few moments of comfort. I've learned something profound over the years about success and failure. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Failure is nothing more than a few errors in judgment repeated every day. Now think about that. The difference between success and failure isn't some giant leap. It's not some massive effort. It's simple daily disciplines versus simple daily errors. And what causes those errors? Feelings. Following feelings instead of following the plan. Here's an example everyone can relate to. Money. Most people have a plan for their money, at least in theory. Save some, invest some, spend wisely. But then feelings show up. They feel like they deserve something nice. They feel like life's too short not to enjoy it. They feel like they work hard and should be able to spend their money how they want. And you know what happens? They spend everything. They save nothing. And then 20 years later, they feel trapped. They feel stressed about money. They feel anxious about the future. But those feelings, the ones they followed 20 years ago, they don't seem so important now, do they? The truth is, feelings are short-term focused. They only care about right now. They don't think about tomorrow or next week or next year. Your plan, if you created it properly, considers the long term. It considers who you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that's the fundamental conflict. Your feelings want you to feel good today. Your plan wants you to be good in the future. Your feelings want immediate gratification. Your plan wants lasting satisfaction. Think about relationships for a moment. How many relationships have been destroyed because someone followed their feelings instead of their commitments? They felt bored, so they quit. They felt attracted to someone else, so they strayed. They felt angry, so they said things they couldn't take back. They felt tired of trying, so they stopped. And what's the result? Broken families, damaged children, years of regret, all because feelings were in charge instead of commitment, instead of the plan to work through hard times, to honor promises, to build something lasting. I want you to understand something about the seasons of life, because this is crucial. Life has seasons. There's a season to plant and a season to harvest. There's a season of growth and a season of reward. But here's what feelings will do to you. They'll convince you to quit just before the harvest. You've been planting, you've been watering, you've been working hard. The crop is growing underground where you can't see it, but you feel tired. You feel like nothing's happening. You feel like your efforts aren't paying off. And feelings will whisper, "Why bother? This isn't working. You should quit and try something else." And if you listen to those feelings, if you abandon your plan right then, you'll walk away just before everything you worked for was about to break through. I've seen this happen countless times. The salesperson who quits after 2 years, right before their network and reputation were about to pay off big. The entrepreneur who closes their business after 3 years of struggle, right before the market was about to turn in their favor. The person who abandons their health plan after 6 months, right before their body was about to transform. All because feelings lied to them about what was possible and what was coming. Here's another economic reality most people miss. Feelings create what I call the restart penalty. Every time you quit something because you don't feel like continuing, you have to start over. And starting over is expensive. It costs time, it costs energy, it costs momentum, it costs confidence. Think about how many people you know who are constantly starting over. They start a diet, quit when they don't feel like continuing, then start a different diet 6 months later. They start a business, quit when it gets hard, then start another business next year. They start learning a skill, quit. When progress slows, then start learning something else. They're paying the restart penalty over and over and over, and that penalty compounds. After enough restarts, they stop believing in their ability to finish anything. After enough abandoned plans, they stop trusting themselves to follow through. But when you follow your plan, regardless of feelings, you eliminate the restart penalty. You keep moving forward. You build momentum. You compound your progress. And here's the beautiful part. Momentum creates its own energy. Once you get rolling, once you build up speed, it actually becomes easier to keep going than to stop. But you never get to experience that momentum if you're constantly restarting based on feelings. The marketplace rewards consistency with interest, with compounding, with momentum, with reputation. But it punishes inconsistency with setbacks, with losses, with having to rebuild what was torn down, with skepticism from others who've watched you quit before. Every time you follow your feelings instead of your plan, you're making a withdrawal from your future. Every time you follow your plan instead of your feelings, you're making a deposit. And just like with money, those deposits and withdrawals compound over time until eventually they create completely different financial realities. Except in this case, they're creating completely different life realities. So the question becomes, how do you actually do this? How do you build the muscle of discipline so you can follow your plan when everything inside you is screaming to follow your feelings? Because let me tell you, knowing what to do and actually doing it are two very different things. I can stand here and tell you all day long that you need to follow your plan, but if you don't know how to train yourself to do it, we're just wasting time with philosophy. Here's what I've discovered. Discipline is like a muscle. When you first start working out, you can barely lift the weight. Your muscles are weak. They shake. They give out quickly. But if you keep lifting, something happens. Those muscles get stronger. What was impossible last month becomes easy this month. What left you exhausted for days now barely makes you breathe hard. Discipline works exactly the same way. The first time you choose your plan over your feelings, it's hard, really hard. It feels like you're trying to bench press a car, but the second time is slightly easier. The 10th time is easier still. The 100th time, you don't even think about it anymore. It's just who you are. Let me tell you how to start building this muscle. And I want you to pay close attention because this is practical, actionable wisdom that can change everything for you. You start small. You don't try to revolutionize your entire life on Monday morning. That's a recipe for failure. That's your feelings trying to feel good about making a big dramatic gesture. No, you start with one thing, one simple commitment that you can keep every single day, no matter what. Maybe it's making your bed every morning. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water as soon as you wake up. Maybe it's writing 3 things you're grateful for. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's simple enough that you can do it even on your worst day, and specific enough that you know whether you did it or not. No wiggle room. No negotiation. No, I sort of did it. Either you did it or you didn't. Now here's the key. You keep that promise to yourself for 30 days straight, not 29 days. 30. Why? Because you're not really building the habit of making your bed or drinking water. You're building something far more valuable. You're building the habit of keeping promises to yourself. You're proving to yourself that when you say you're going to do something, you do it. You're creating evidence that you're reliable, that you're trustworthy, that you're the kind of person who follows through. And let me tell you what happens after those 30 days. Something shifts inside you. You start to see yourself differently. You start to trust yourself more. And with that foundation, that proof that you can keep a commitment, you add another small habit, then another, then another. Before you know it, you've built an entire life structure on the foundation of keeping promises to yourself. But here's where most people mess up. They think discipline means beating themselves up, being harsh, being rigid. That's not discipline. That's punishment. Real discipline is simply doing what you said you'd do, when you said you'd do it, whether you feel like it or not. It's not emotional. It's not dramatic. It's just following through. Let me talk about mornings for a moment, because mornings are crucial. How you start your day determines how your day goes. If you wake up and immediately start following your feelings, checking your phone, hitting snooze, lying there thinking about how you don't want to get up, you've already lost. You've set the pattern for the whole day. You've taught yourself that feelings are in charge. But if you wake up and immediately start following your plan, if you get up when the alarm goes off, if you do that first commitment no matter what, you've won. You've set a different pattern. You've taught yourself that your plan is in charge. I've watched successful people for decades, and I can tell you they almost all have one thing in common. They control their mornings. They don't let their mornings happen to them. They have a plan for the first hour, and they follow it, not sometimes, not when they feel like it, every single day. Because they know that if they can win the first hour, they can win the day. If they can win the day, they can win the week. If they can win the week, they can win the year. And if they can win enough years, they can win at life. Now let's talk about environment, because this is something most people completely overlook. You cannot separate yourself from your environment. You're influenced by everything around you, whether you realize it or not. The people you spend time with, the books you read, the shows you watch, the music you listen to, the spaces you live and work in, they're all either supporting your plan or undermining it. If you're trying to follow a plan to build a business, but you're spending all your time with people who think working for yourself is risky and crazy, good luck. Their feelings about safety and security will seep into you. If you're trying to follow a plan to get healthy, but your kitchen is full of junk food and your friends all want to go out for pizza and beer every weekend, you're fighting an uphill battle. If you're trying to follow a plan to read and grow, but your evenings are spent in front of the television, well, you can see where this is going. You've got to design your environment to support your plan, not fight against it. Surround yourself with people who are also following plans instead of feelings. Read books by people who've achieved what you want to achieve. Create spaces that make it easy to do what you said you'd do. Remove temptations that make it hard. This isn't being weak. This is being smart. This is understanding that willpower is limited, but environment is constant. Here's something else that matters more than most people think: identity. How you see yourself determines what you do. If you see yourself as someone who's lazy, as someone who never follows through, as someone who's just not disciplined, then guess what? You'll act accordingly. Your actions will match your identity. But if you see yourself as someone who keeps commitments, as someone who does what they say, as someone who follows their plan, you'll act that way too. The question is, how do you change your identity? Not by thinking about it, not by wishing it, not by making declarations. You change your identity through evidence, through proof, through repeated action. Every time you follow your plan instead of your feelings, you're casting a vote for the identity you want to have. You're creating evidence that you're that person. Do it enough times, collect enough evidence, and your identity shifts. You stop trying to be disciplined, and you simply are disciplined. It becomes who you are, not what you do. Let me tell you the difference between motivation and discipline, because confusing these two will cost you everything. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes. Some days you feel motivated, some days you don't. If you're depending on motivation to follow your plan, you're in trouble, because motivation is unreliable. It's wonderful when it shows up, but you can't count on it. Discipline, on the other hand, is a decision followed by action. It doesn't require motivation. It doesn't require inspiration. It just requires commitment to doing what you said you'd do. People tell me all the time, Jim, I just need to get motivated. No, you don't. You need to get disciplined. You need to stop waiting for some magical feeling to push you into action and start acting regardless of feelings. Because here's a secret. Action creates motivation more often than motivation creates action. Start doing the thing even though you don't feel like it, and watch what happens. Usually, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, the motivation shows up. The inspiration arrives. But it arrives after you started, not before. There's a simple technique I want to share with you. When you don't feel like doing what you plan to do, count backwards from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then move. Don't think, don't negotiate, don't analyze your feelings. Just count and move. Why does this work? Because it interrupts the pattern of letting feelings make decisions. It creates a gap between the feeling and the action, and in that gap you can insert your will, your commitment, your plan. And let me tell you about accountability, because this is powerful. Find someone who's also trying to follow their plan instead of their feelings. Check in with them daily. Tell them what you committed to do. Tell them whether you did it. Not for judgment, not for praise, just for acknowledgement, just to make it real. There's something about knowing someone else will ask that makes it harder to break the commitment. Use that. Don't be proud. Use every tool available to help you follow through. Now let's talk about what all of this really means. Let's talk about the deeper truth beneath the surface. Because following your plan instead of your feelings isn't just about getting more done or achieving more success. It's about something far more profound. It's about who you become in the process. It's about character. It's about the kind of person you're sculpting yourself into with every single decision you make. You see, self-control and freedom are not opposites. They're partners. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you feel like doing whenever you feel like doing it. But that's not freedom. That's slavery to impulse. That's being controlled by every whim, every craving, every emotion that passes through you. Real freedom comes from self-control. Real freedom comes from being able to choose your actions based on your values and your plans, not based on your momentary feelings. Think about it. The person who can't say no to dessert isn't free. They're controlled by their appetite. The person who can't get out of bed when they plan to isn't free. They're controlled by their desire for comfort. The person who can't stick to their budget isn't free. They're controlled by their impulse to spend. But the person who has developed the ability to follow their plan regardless of feelings, that person is free. Free to become who they want to become. Free to build the life they want to build. Free to pursue goals that matter instead of being tossed around by every feeling that comes along. And here's what's beautiful about this. It compounds over years, not days, not weeks, years. Imagine two people starting from the same place, same background, same opportunities, same challenges, but one follows their feelings and one follows their plan. After a year, you might not see much difference. Maybe the plan follower is slightly ahead. After 5 years, the difference becomes noticeable. After 10 years, they're living in completely different realities. After 20 years, they might as well be from different planets. One built a life through consistent daily decisions aligned with their plans. The other drifted wherever their feelings took them, which usually means in circles. But here's what matters even more than the external results. Look at who they've become internally. The person who followed their plan has developed unshakable self-trust. They know if they commit to something, they'll do it. They have confidence not because life has been easy, but because they've proven to themselves over and over that they can do hard things. They have self-respect because they've honored their word to the one person who matters most, themselves. The person who followed their feelings, they might have moments of success, sure. But deep down, they don't trust themselves. They know they quit when things get hard. They know they break promises to themselves. They know they can't count on themselves to follow through. And that lack of self-trust seeps into everything. It affects their relationships because if you can't trust yourself, how can you expect others to trust you?